All right, we're live again.
All right.
Okay, we are back. So terribly sorry about everybody. That was a huge frustration. My stream crashed and I had to just completely relaunch it. So we'll just go ahead and redrop the link and hopefully we can get everyone back in here. But in the meantime, why don't we just start talking about some of the bullet points that we had on here. So yeah, we talked about the terrain that we're playing on with the new types of terrain that we have available to us. It is so much easier for us to hide. Shooting armies are not nearly as big a deal as they used to be, in my opinion. And because of that, we have the ability to hold the battlefield like never freaking before. On a bunch of the different GW open maps that are out there, you cannot draw lines on us right now. So, what does that give us the ability to do? It gives us the ability to actually dominate the primary unlike ever before. And this is something I really want to talk about when it comes to list building because every single army in the game has a way that they score, a way that they win, a way that they just dominate the game. Some of them is by crushing you on secondaries. Some of them is by killing your enemy, and then some of them is by never dying and just winning the primary. We are actually fairly similar to Necrons in that standpoint, in my opinion. Our job is to just not die and to hold that freaking primary. In 10th edition, primary is worth 50 points instead of the 45 it used to be, which means secondaries is worth 40 points. So by winning primary is how you win 10th edition. So that is, in my opinion, the way that our list need to be built in this new edition. Um, okay, perfect. People are starting to pop back on here. Nice. All right. Everyone's back in the stream. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. I was just ranting a little bit while I was making sure the stream was launched again. Welcome back again. Um, so all right. We wanted to talk about the Trajan damage AP reduction. What was it that you wanted to talk about in that?
Oh, with me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I want. I just want an FAQ on it. Really. I think people argue about it too much. It just sounds like a lot of headache.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be a lot of, like I can see the argument both ways, and I think the designer commentary was really, really, really unhelpful. I don't know how you felt about it, but I preferred it before that commentary came out because I thought I knew exactly what they intended with
Mhm.
how it's written in the unit card, and then they came up with this like, oh, the weapon profile and the model profile. I don't, I hope that it works the way that we all hope it does, because otherwise it's not terribly useful. It's significantly less useful than it would be otherwise. Where most of our damage is damage too, so we don't want to get super crushed by damage reduction.
Yeah, so I will say that WTC has released their rulings on this, and if you for those of you who don't know, WTC is just like it's a very big tournament circuit, and they absolutely agree that it means that you can't alter them at all outside of their armor safe. So yes, if you have AP1, AP2, you can take Trajan's unit to their 4 up invuln, but outside of that, you can't alter it. So basically, he allows you to ignore damage reduction. He allows you to ignore any armor of contempt strats that's going to be used. He allows you to ignore to hit and to wound modifiers as well. So that's coming from the WTC, which is probably the biggest of all the independent tournaments out there. Doesn't mean it's going to apply to the whole game, but that's the way I'm ruling it for right now. Golden Light turn one. Golden Light turn one. This is a big one for a bunch of people. Yes, it works. Rules as written. It does not need any FAQ. You can always Golden Light turn one. So, for example, if you were going second and your opponent, so your opponent finishes their movement and they finish their turn on turn one, you could from Golden Light your Terminators, pick them up, and then drop them right back down in your first turn one. So it does give us a bunch of mobility, and it's extremely, extremely powerful. Inquisitors into Sagittarium. Why don't you talk about that, sir?
So this is it, for the people that want to do it. There's arguments both ways to say Sagittarium can be joined by units, can be joined by leaders that could join Guardians, right? So on that basis, they whatever Inquisitor could join, but then on the Inquisitor data sheet it says the unit that it joins has to be battlefield. So there's always that kind of we
Yeah,
just want better written rules. I think we don't
that's
want to spend a lot
one.
of time arguing rules.
Yeah, that's one that I honestly I wouldn't bother trying to fight it right now. I wouldn't do it. Because it's kind of like you and I were talking on the stream earlier. It's like, you know what? It's probably better to read the rules in the worst light for yourself as possible. um, so yeah, I agree. That one needs to be clarified. Um, okay. Uh, Is it viable to deep strike your whole Custodes army? No, it's not, because you can't do it. You can only maximum have 1,000 points in reserves. So, but you could deep strike half your army. Have you tried that?
Deep striking half the army.
Yeah.
Sometime, well, not half, but maybe I've tried lists that want to deep strike more.
Hmm.
Basically, it depends, how bad the terrain is. Sometimes you just want to rapidly ingress a bunch of stuff, and that's your game plan, right?
Yep.
But generally, so again, it all just looks. I look at their list, I look at my list, and I think, do I need to screen? Do I need to have enough bodies out to screen up my backfield? Can anything bad happen if I don't screen? Usually, stuff can't really come in on turn one, for example. But you might go second, and then you can't screen, right? If your stuff hasn't started on the board.
Yep.
So I'm not a massive fan of starting that much stuff in Deep Strike. Maybe like 600-700 points, something like that. I think is fine because it also causes them lots of problems. Like not having all your pieces on the board when they're not hypermobile means that they have to basically play around you, potentially deep striking, rapid ingressing all the time when they're planning their moves. Obviously, some people aren't even doing that. They're just playing their thing and they're not even thinking about all the possibilities that you're doing. So it kind of works like a
Yep.
pin in chess. Like they have to spend resources doing something to a threat that you might not even ever do it, right? It's just a threat of it. So I think it's
Totally.
kind of nice to have some deep strikes for sure.
Yeah, I'm deep striking. I've got 2 units that I really typically consider, 3 units that I consider for deep strike. The first one is going to be the big Blade Champ squad, because I'm running a 9 man of Guardians with the Blade Champ. They are absolutely a very good target for rapid ingress because I always give Ceaseless Hunter to that Blade Champion. So if he has any out of movement phase movement and he screws it up, then I get free movement in his phase, and then I get to move in my phase, and then I get to go in. I also consider my 5 mana Terminators with the Terminator Captain, and I consider the 3 man Terminators. I typically only ever deep strike 2 of those units. Um, because I do love having one Terminator unit on the table just so they can redeploy using that from Golden Light trick that we just spoke about. Yeah. Redeploy after first or before. Yeah, so the redeploy after first or before, it does seem like it actually, most of the GW has intended for all the redeploys to be happening before you determine who goes first, which I have mixed feelings about it, but that does seem to be how the rules read. Is that how you've read it?
It's well, in their commentary, it's still unclear.
Yeah.
So they just need to do an FAQ for the FAQ, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think WTC ruled on it now, didn't they? Or they said you can't
Yeah.
redeploy infiltrates or something like that. So
Yeah, so the WTC has ruled, and they're saying that redeploys happen before, actually,
okay, and
which,
and I think against GSE in particular, this helps massively because now you don't have to
yeah.
deploy so far back because you're scared of these aberrants that are either going to charge you if they go first or just leave if they don't.
Yeah. Got a question from Kogu. Did one of you play against an Ashen Military player running multiple Manticores and Basilisk? All right, this is an awesome question, and I have thoughts on it. So basically, here's the deal about Astra Militarum. It doesn't matter how good their indirect fire is to a certain extent, because when they start focusing firing you down, first off, you can -1 damage if you really are worried about that blob dying. If you have a shield captain, you can do it for free, which is a big boost for the shield captain. But two, those guys can not possibly outscore you. They just can't do it. If they are all indirect, you're going to hold primary and you're going to win, which is the beautiful thing about this edition, which people are missing. Oh, shooting's way more overpowered, shooting's way more killy, indirect's way more killy. Yes, those things are true, but at the same time, melee armies score points so much better than the indirect, or than all of your indirect and shooting armies. Just by being on objectives, you're going to score more than the secondaries are worth. And being on objective scores you half the secondaries anyway, because secure no man's land, secure no man's land, extend battle lines, and capture enemy outpost, and then or not capture enemy outpost, but the one where you have to take it off your opponent. All of these are just things that you score naturally by holding primary. So by holding your primary, you're already going to get half your secondary points anyway. So when you're running into those huge indirect armies, just understand it's okay if they shoot you because they're not going to have the points to hold the no man's land objectives like you are. So I'm not really that concerned about the indirect, to be honest with you.
I mean, I think Guard took a massive nerf because when they did the points for indirect fire, but
Yep.
then guard weren't super strong to begin with. So I think now they're even in an even worse spot, and I think you're less likely to see them. So it's just something you have to worry about much less. That's my kind of take on it.
Yeah. If you post your list down there, maybe we can take a look at it. But it sounds more like a list thing. I'm not sure why you're struggling into the indirect guard that much right now. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm just maybe post your list and we can give you a few better ideas on that one.
Because if you take like a very expensive, like I don't know how much of my rant on Venatori was included before it cut out, but like they're just too expensive, right? So if you're getting shot by indirect on Venatori, like you're gonna feel like your army's evaporating because it is.
Yeah, that's true. um, yeah. So demo charges not returning on respawn. Actually, so this is really important. So when everyone's talking about the GSC demo charge bomb, 'cause I made a video on it. It's actually very terrifying. But no, they do not respawn when they come back on the table on the battlefield. The wording for them returning units, the wording says replace the destroyed unit back onto the tabletop, which means you're returning the same unit back onto the table. It's not a different unit like it is with the guard stratagem. So the Imperial Guard have a stratagem that lets them return a new unit, but it's a fresh unit. But not with the GSC. They're returning the same unit that was already destroyed, so they're not getting a refill of the Gemma charges. So it's a one trick pony. Still terrifying, but at least it's only
Yeah, I
one
mean,
shot.
and they still take two, and they still take two, and
Yeah.
two's bad enough. And I think people who want to do it more than two times, they should feel bad for playing
Yeah.
GSC anyway.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about it.
Dude, 100 freaking percent. Very scary, but not quite that scary. Okay. So DJ Myrtle says, I would love to take Ceaseless Hunter more, but oftentimes I don't need to fall back if I am just going to just stay on primary with the unit anyway. Is it really worth 2/3 of a custodian guard? That's a great question. It depends on who you're putting it on, right? So, for example, I am always going to be trying to put it on my big blob of custodians because in my big blob that I run with my Blade Champion, because what's happening in 10th edition is combat is so nerfed with the pylon restrictions and the charge restrictions. It's a really big problem. And oftentimes you're not going to be able to get all of your units into combat. So you're only being able to fight at half efficiency. So the ability to actually fall back and get back into combat at maximum efficiency with all of your units is so freaking powerful. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't come up every single game. Because if it happens once in a tournament and you're going to win the tournament because of that occurring. Fallback and charge is one of the single most powerful abilities in 10th edition, simply because of how nerfed combat maneuvers are. So that's my take on that.
And I think especially if you do decide to take bigger units, it just becomes even more of like auto. Does that make sense? Because it's a fixed price enhancement, but it's now a much larger force multiplier, and it's just free movement. So why wouldn't you?
There you go. Okay, where would you put Trajan in a custodian guard unit so you can potentially shoot twice, or a warden unit where he tanks shots? All right. Do you have opinions on this, sir?
I've tried them in both,
Hmm.
and I think it just like I look at the map, I look at where the deployments are, I look at the firing lines, and I think, okay, do I need to take a turn where they're in the middle of nowhere, they're not going to be on an objective, they're not going to be able to fight fast, um, you know, for to run towards that objective, that's the one that's probably going to have Trajan on it, so that if you do get charged in the middle of nowhere and you can't pop fight first, Trajan just has it, so you're not locked to being on a primary. And then you have to think, do they need to kill stuff or do they need to actually survive? And then you pick a mix, like do they go on the Warden squad or the Guardian squad? Obviously, he kills more with Guardians, but
So my thoughts on it is really simple. It's the question I'm having in my own list right now is do I keep the wardens? Because the warden strategy is really amazing. They stand in the middle, they can hold, and you pop their fort, feel no pain. They're going to be -1 to wound because they have the character in the unit. Their entire army shoots you, they don't die. Maybe you lose one or two, but they don't die. And then suddenly you charge them and you fight first still. It's a exceptionally powerful block that's very hard to chew through. But on the other side, having Trajan in with the unit of Custodian Guard, which are now ignoring any wound modifiers, they're now ignoring, they're getting the full wound rerolls, and they're ignoring any damage modifiers. It's really freaking nice. I'm having that debate myself right now. Bottom line is it's completely viable either way it runs. It's
Because,
very viable either way.
yeah, because I think I'm with you. The Wardens, when you compare their output to Guardians,
It's nothing.
it feels very lackluster, and Trajan definitely adds that bit of oomph. It kind of balances out the combat potential of both.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so.
And I think this is another thing. Like when you create your list, you shouldn't really have it locked in your mind. Like this character's going with this unit. I think you should be a bit flexible in terms of, what do I actually need to do on this map with this mission with this opponent.
Silas, he's got a little comment here. Hey guys, just want to say big thank you and insights here on Discord. Great work. Hey man, thanks so much. Super glad you're enjoying it. I know Custodes Central's channels. He puts a lot of work into those things, and they're really good videos. So I'm really grateful for him being on stream with us today. And so we're super happy to have you here, and we're glad you appreciate the work. Okay, so let's go back onto some of the lists that we have. No shooting or some shooting. Okay. Would you be okay if I just went ahead and ran through my list right here? Because I think that's going to answer some of these questions pretty well. Is that cool?
Yeah, 100%. You should do, and you're
Okay.
having success with it, and you feel bullish about it. So I think everybody wants to hear like
All right.
this is a
All right. So what I'll do is I'll drop a link in the description after we're done here, and so you guys can go watch my video where I go super in depth on it. But essentially, here's the way my list runs right now. I am running Trajan, Blade Champ, Terminator, and Shield Captain Terminator armor. Trajan is running with a 6 man of Wardens. Blade Champ is running with a 9 man of Guardians. They do have a Vexilla, and the Blade Champ has Ceaseless Hunter. Then the Shield Captain is running with a 5 man of Terminators. And then in addition to all that, I have one extra 5 man of Custodian Guards and one extra 3 man of Terminators. That's the list. In addition, I have Kyria Draxus and an Eversor Assassin. So Kyria Draxus is always running with the 5 man Custodian Guards because she's going to make them untargetable outside of 18. So suddenly what I have is I have an Eversor who has lone operative, means that he can get on an objective and you can't shoot him outside of 12. So buzz off, nerd, because you can't kill him. He's going to hold that objective, and I'm gonna keep it. He's not meant for killing things. Then I have Kyria Draxus' unit, which can stand out in the open, can't be shot. Then I have a unit of Wardens, which can stand out in the open. You can shoot them, but you're not going to kill them. And then I've got my big, huge Blade Guard, my Blade Champ unit of Custodian Guards that do their advance and charge, and they smash whatever they touch. Those guys have so much killing potential, it's not even funny. Lastly, I have the 5 man of Terminators, which can also smash just about everything. And then I've got the other 3 man that can rapidly redeploy where I need them to be. So in my list, I have no heavy firepower, and I haven't needed it. I took it to an RTT this weekend. I smashed Knights twice, and I killed big Nids. The only list that I haven't been able to crack through with this so far is my buddy Shettel, who's actually in the chat. Holla at you, Shettel. Love you, buddy. That's Crord over there. He's correcting me on some of the misinformation I spread about Guard, by the way. So you guys go read his comments. So he's running a big Necron army with double Lich Guard and just a crazy amount of firepower. I haven't been on. That's the only army that's actually beat my Custodes so far, and it's so I'm pretty freaking high on it, guys. I'm not wasting a bunch of points on these Caladius Gravity tanks, which I know people love them. I use it in every single game in 9th edition, but this is 10th edition. All my Custodian Guardians, all my Terminators are getting basically full wound rolls whenever I need it. So even if I'm wounding my vehicles on 5s in melee, doesn't matter because I'm getting full wound rolls. I spend 1 CP to get full wound rolls and wound them on 4s. So I can run through anything. Toughness is not a issue for the Custodes. So as far as shooting or no shooting is concerned, I don't need shooting. I've got tons of plink shooting. So if you're playing against Eldar, you're playing against even Marines, the plink shooting, all the constant damage or strength 4, AP 1, damage 2, you're still putting a hurting on most armies. And if it's a big vehicle army list, doesn't matter because you don't need it, because once you get into melee, you can kill them. And a lot of times you don't actually even have to kill them. Like my last Knights game of the RTT, I actually didn't really kill anything. I just move blocked him in his deployment zone, and I outscored him on primary the entire game. And he ended up tabling me, except for, I think I just had my Eversor Assassin left, but I still won because he couldn't get out of his deployment zone for 4 turns. So that's the list, guys. It's three characters, 3 characters, then 4 units, and then 2 bonus characters with Kyria Draxus and the Eversor. And it's really, really, really slapping. But I'll definitely make sure I put down a description, a video link in the description, and you guys can go check out the full in-depth tutorial on it. But yeah, so that's my take on shooting versus some shooting. I don't think we need any shooting right now. I think Sagittarium are terrible right now. Um,
Agreed. AP1, no bueno.
AP1 doesn't work. They lost assault on their weapons. Like, what's their rule? Their rule is they can get devastating wounds once per game. Like, who cares? It's strength 5. Like, it's a bad unit. They didn't go down in points at all. The Cladius Gravity Tank is, while scary sounding on paper, when you really think about it, it's 215 points for a model that should kill a Rhino and won't kill an Armiger, although it technically could kill an Armiger. Right?
I will
That's not
say
worth it.
from running from running a lot of Caladius for a lot of games, it's very, very swingy. And
Yeah.
you look at the profile and you think it shouldn't be swingy. This is like about the most reliable thing you can imagine, with lethal hits and twin linked and -3 and D6+2, right? But you just don't have the volume of shots to make anything reliable, right? Somebody had to make like 4 or 5 saves. They just roll 4-ups, right? But did 0 damage, right? You've got 400 points that did no damage, right? And that feels really bad. And you can say like that's unlucky. But I'm starting to come around to the perspective that it's really annoying when you're planning for them to do something and then they just don't, and you have no agency over that because it's just dice. And if you're rolling, what is it, like 32 dice, hitting on 2s, exploding 6s, and then you're re-rolling all wounds, the distribution on that is very different versus 8 shots. Now that's not me saying I hate Caladius. I still kind of like Caladius, but I'm definitely turning around on the point because I had so many turns where they just do actually no damage, and then they get blasted back because your opponent has a good shooting turn and now you're down 400 points, and that's not. It's like it's unlucky, but also I feel like I'm intentionally putting that risk into my list, and I could lose versus an opponent and a list that I should beat by dice. So I mean, I certainly hear what you're saying. I mean, you're just saying like point efficiency wise, they're not as good. Which is probably true if you get them to combat, obviously, but there's definitely something to be said about it's just not as reliable as people think it is, especially with the cover. Lots of things are 2-up in cover and they're saving on 4s, so you're not actually getting that much damage through sometimes.
Yeah, so actually Shettel's in the chat here right now. Once again, holla at that guy. So he says 60 points cheaper he'd consider the Cladius. And I agree with him, right? So he wants me to compare them to the Doomsday Arc. So let's do it. Let's compare.
You want to be Elder? Okay.
No, let's compare it to the Necron's Doomsday Arc, okay? So our Necron's Doomsday Arc, it's 185 points. It has devastating wounds if it stays still. It's essentially always hitting on 2s, just like our Caladius Gravity Tank. He has D6+1 and Blast for his gun. That's going to be at strength 14, and it's going to be like AP4, and it's going to be damage flat 4. In addition to that, he's got 20 bonus shots that are going to have lethal hits, and it's going to be like strength 4, AP1, or no AP, just damage 1. But that's not the point of it, right? But that's for 185 points, and it has a 4-up invuln, and it regenerates wounds every single turn. So that's the value they get for 185 points, which is actually, when I do this, the math on the stats, and I should have the sheets that I can post into the description here, if you guys want to look at the damage output of the Cladius Gravity Tank. The Doomsday Arc does more for less points and is way tougher. So that's what every other army has. So it's like, you don't want to bring that tank to out long range an army that has cheaper long range. That's better. That's my argument on the Cladius Gravity Tank.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think people are going to say it's the most efficient long range anti tank, but it is one of the options that we have, and we have very limited options in Custodes.
But we do have the single best troops in the game. Our core index is so unbelievable. Terminators are just incredible units. Custodian guards are unbelievable right now. The damage output of custodian guards and their survivability is nuts. So we shouldn't feel bad at all.
Oh, survivability, I'm not I'm not quite there. But I think 5 attacks is a lot.
Exploding on 6s.
5 attacks is a lot. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I think that covers what I want to talk about with long range grant. Let's talk about allies a little bit, because this is a really hot take that a lot of people have when it comes to allies for custodians. Just right off the hot press before I speak, what do you think about allies that we are going to be wanting to consider?
I really like the exaction squads, and I like the assassins that can infiltrate, scout move, that kind of stuff. And the way that I construct my list, I actually start from there rather than picking all the killing stuff. I think, okay, this is all the utility that I need in my list, and then I build out from that. But all my lists start with 2 exaction squads. It's too easy. It's too cheap.
And that's actually one of the changes I am considering to my tournament list right now is I'm thinking about downgrading the wardens to custodian guard and putting 2 exaction squads in there. So sounds like we're on a pretty good same page there. Uh, do you like knights as allies?
Um, Probably not anymore. So I like right at the start of the edition, I thought the Castellan's really busted because it's really cheap, it's towering, and the fact that it's towering is really massive because you can shoot stuff that wants to not get shot. So you have target selection, and it's T13 versus T12, 2 up versus 3 up. It's like a massive increase in kind of survivability. But there's a lot of things in the game that will blast you off.
Yeah.
And the thing with the Castellan is you don't have that many shots on the volcano cannon, so that's also very swingy. So this is like, I think as you get more and more competitive, you're trying to intentionally build out all of the nasty variants that can happen, so that it's all within player skill. Like that's how I imagine that it kind of works. And so even though like in general, I think back when I think it was like what 475, 485, it was like a real bargain. But now I think knights probably not. I mean, I suggest knights for people who don't have Forge World because Forge World is very expensive. So if they're just trying to put some anti-tank guns into their list, then this is an option that they could do, especially because they might have some from another army, something like that. But then you're going to say we don't need these guns either. We should just take more dudes, which is valid as well.
The only knight I think I would consider would be Canis Rex, to be honest with you. And actually, I don't actually. You probably can't even take him since he's a special character, right?
I don't think there's any restriction on that. I think you could if you wanted. I just personally wouldn't because he doesn't give me the anti-tank shooting. He does like good anti-elite shooting, right?
Yeah, I think he's the only.
His fist is nice.
yeah. I mean, I think he's the only thing I would consider actually. But even still, he takes too many points away from the rest of the Custodes army. We're so limited in what we have. Think about the list I just gave you. It's pure infantry, which is the cheapest things in the Codex. And it's not Venatari, right? And it's still 6 units. I mean, we are working on a very limited army. Like, I don't think we want to really restrain ourselves that much. I had the exact same argument actually in 9th edition when people got super excited, start bringing like triple Helverins that really got excited for the Custodes. Of course, I was a Shadow Keepers guy, not an Emperor's Chosen guy. But when people started wanting to really run the Helverins, they're like, okay, cool. Now we have reasonable long range firepower. Like, okay, stop, full stop. Because now when you ally in your reasonable long range firepower, what are you getting? You're getting reasonable long range firepower that's going to crumble to any actual long range firepower, and then you're playing with 3/4 of an army. So I don't think the knights are the way to go. I would say Canis Rex is probably the way to go if you're doing it. However, I 100% agree with you. Exaction squads are huge, and the assassins in 10th edition are freaking amazing. I believe the 2 main choices are probably going to be the Calidus and the Eversor. I am super hot on the Eversor, and you're pretty hot on the Calidus, right?
Calidus, I'm not so sure. Calidus is I've been running them a few times. Basically, they're real expensive, right? Because for a few points more, you could have 2 Alaris. So every time I make that comparison, it's like a bit gross. But then sometimes when you don't have as many other, because I like to have 2 exaction squads and at least one 2-man Alaris squad to do kind of secondaries and missions. You might think it's a bit of a waste to do. To spend the guys on the missions, but I like to have a lot of things that can go back into reserve and drop back in, and the Calidus can do that repeatedly, but it is very expensive, and they have to not die until they get their Vect off. But the Eversor, very cheap, and it can, as you said, it can kill like crap that they try to send to kill you, for example.
One nice thing about that Calidus is actually because GW is dumb sometimes. I love GW and I do appreciate them making a better game because I do think 10th edition is a much better game. They do write dumb rules sometimes. Now you can use rules and abilities on your units when they are not on the table, which is a little annoying. So she actually can Vect from off the table, which is dumb. It is what it is.
Yeah, well, and now at least they've put it like early on into the rule set instead of
yeah. Sure.
They've at least done that. And then with the Vindicare, this is just a model that I'm happy to have die turn 1, doing nothing other than stopping a scout move if I need to. Not that that's super common in my matchups, but it did come up once, and I thought, oh, this is really good value for 80 points. So I just couldn't get charged turn 1, and then I wasn't forced to deploy, further back, because I think being forced to deploy really defensively really hurts, because you're usually like a turn behind getting on primary. That really hurts, right? So I'm happy just sacking it just to do that, stop enemy infiltrating somewhere annoying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes they can get to a spot, you get your scout move, but then it's not actually safe to get onto the objective, so you're just kind of denying them those kind of pockets. So I'm used to these kind of annoying L's where it's really hard to get there until maybe turn 3, and you have to cross this like no man's land area where you can't quite make the jump, right? I suppose if you did have Venatari, you could do it with an advance, but that's really expensive, and I hate that idea anyway. But the reason why I like a Vindicare is mainly for the infiltrate and the lone agent. The shooting's just nice because, as you said, you don't really get to shoot it that often, and many times you'd rather not shoot and just hold the point and be 100% safe.
I actually just loaded up TTS because I think this is really valuable to show people right here. I think I want to show people just how freaking hard it is to actually draw a line on your unit. I think that's a good idea. So let me switch to, I'm just going to switch to a TTS view, everyone. So just, and I'm just going to add this source, screen capture, add source. Sorry, I should have done this before we had everything set up. Boom. Done. All right, so here we go. So you guys can see everything I can see on TTS now. And check this out. So here's a unit of custodians, and I'm just going to place them right here in the middle. Let's give myself some objectives. And we're going to pretend that this is an Eversor. This Eversor cannot see me. Can't see me. This Eversor is standing right here. I am standing right here. This Vindicare cannot see me. You see how like frustrating this is? Let's put this Vindicare in the upper corner of the ruins. Well, it can't draw a line of sight to me because it's crossing through these massive bases. This is what's happening in the newer edition, in the next new edition of Warhammer 40,000. It's very, very challenging for shooting units to ever draw a line of sight onto you. So when drawing line of sight is this challenging, having a single model whose entire purpose is to shoot one bullet is very challenging to run. So that's why I don't like the Vindicare, just because it's so freaking hard to actually draw a line of sight on the thing that you're targeting.
Oh, this is a lot of terrain.
Yeah, so this is actually standard GW that's being adopted for. This is one of the prototypes for WTC, and it's a standard GW layout though. I mean, this is just
no. It's GW layout, but it doesn't have the gaps. Do you know what I mean?
No, it does actually. These are the gaps, right? So that's what people were missing on that. Like this little part, this extension of the ruin is the gap. Like it's is
this how they intended it? I thought they had all these windows everywhere.
They do. So like if I scroll down like this and you see through the window, that's the window. But because of the rule towering, everyone's playing these as closed right now. So like it's so easy to hide your models. Shooting really is not that big a problem right now.
I see. Okay. Yeah, no, this is more. I would prefer to play on this, and I think I very probably quickly turn to I don't need Caladius.
Yeah, so this is very, very standard, by the way, for play. This is what GW said too. So this is what you're gonna see.
Yeah, no, but if you count everything as closed, then knights aren't that scary actually.
Nah, they're really not. So hopefully that was useful for people to see that. I'm gonna close on out of that now. All right, let's get back to the steak and the man with the hat. All right, we got a few comments here that I'm going to answer real fast. What's your guys' opinions on Spears versus Shield on the Guard Squad? He's running 3-2 or all Spears. In my humble opinion, all Spears all the time, baby. The only thing that gets a Shield is the Vexilla.
100% agree on a 5-man.
Dope. So we are 100% agreed.
To be honest, we agree on most things, actually. I've watched a lot of your content, and I'm like, good. It's very rare that we disagree on stuff. It's just about the guns.
I think so.
And I might even be coming to join your camp on guns in a bit. So.
I'm American, but I'm not trying to bring guns to this fight.
No. But also, like, if the map that I play on change as well, then my bias will also You know
Of
what I mean?
course.
Like, yeah.
Yes. So I'm trying to talk. So I'm trying to talk about it from like my experience as in a 10th edition context. Um, I've just found that's really hard for a lot of people when they're making their new list now. Is they're trying to make ninth edition list, but that's not what we're playing anymore. It actually is very challenging to make that shift. Um, Then, when hitting vehicles and monsters, which stance is more efficient, Dakatari or Vendax? So, actually, your exploding sixes is way more efficient if you have wound rerolls and you're wounding on a five. So, if you're going into toughness 13 vehicles or monsters, and you get the wound reroll and you're hitting on fives or wounding on fives, exploding sixes is better. If you're wounding on sixes, auto wounding on sixes is better. So that's really how the math actually distributes.
Yeah, it's just like a pure math question, right? Because
Yep.
fives rolling is like 55%, which is better than 50%.
Hmm.
So that's it, right? If it's under 50%, you take the lethal, and if it's over, then you take the rerolls or the explodings.
There you go. Christopher, hey man, what's up, Christopher? He's one of my favorite dudes. On a 10-man guard squad, still only one shield on the Vex.
I'd
Yeah,
say
yeah,
no.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I literally only put the shield on the Vex allied just because you can't take a spear. So I'm always gonna give them the shield on the Vex allied, but I'm not putting on any other guardians in the squad.
I really, I think if I went to 9 or 10, I'd probably take a second shield just to eat the because what I want to do is not have to pop AGA and just take the shots.
Yep.
Just take the 3 damage and save the CP because once you've got 9 or 10 plus the character, it's sometimes very hard to get everybody's attacks in anyway. So the fact that they're just there, they're just kind of ablative wounds in a way.
That's a good
Um,
argument, actually. That makes a lot of sense.
so I think I would have no problem with 2. 3 is like I think debatable, but I don't think I would have an issue with somebody taking 2 shields total, including the one on the Vex in a 10-man.
Including the one on the Vex. All right, I think I'm with you.
Yeah,
All right, you
yeah.
got me. You got me, sir. I'm with you on that one. Touche. Okay, then does the Callous Assassin merit any kill consideration for the Vex? Yeah, actually, so thanks for your comment, Jata Hook. I'm sorry, buddy. I have no idea how to pronounce that one. Yeah, so I think we just agreed that the Calidus totally does merit consideration, but it's challenging. It's challenging because the Eversword gives you so much value for a lot cheaper. And as my good friend here, the Michelin Steak, just said, Calidus is almost 2 Alaris Terminators. And it's like, which one's more valuable? I don't know the answer to that for
Like the whole
everybody.
reason you take the Calidus is for the Vect,
Yeah,
if
that's
that
right.
makes sense. You're not taking it for its precision flamer that's doing nothing, or its fight first phase sword that's doing like it's just gonna die, right? The whole reason why you're paying all those points is for the Vect because it infiltrates, but you have to be like way more careful with it than a Vindicator because if it dies before getting Vect off, you are super sad. Um, so it's like it is having infiltrate, but you have to be really very careful with it, like it's your precious baby. Until it gets a backed up, and then it can do whatever. But even then, you don't want it to die because you just want it to be doing secondaries every single turn. You know, if it
Hmm.
happens, go land in a corner, go land in their backfield. Do it's just free real estate as long as they don't, they can't screen you out.
Now, I'm gonna talk about a little bit thing here that I'm fairly passionate about. And we're actually posting a battle report which details this beautifully in about a day or two. But how to play the game regardless of who your opponent is. This is a really important concept that I feel like a lot of people just they fail to grasp. When you look at the really, really good players, they're going to do basically the same thing. They make their list to do a job, and it does not matter what their opponent does in response. They're going to try to do that job. Okay? So, what do I mean by that? My list, the entire purpose of my list is to beat my opponent on primary. I don't care about scoring every secondary point I can get. If I get investigate signals, I'm essentially always going to recycle that. Whoa! Hello, Mr. Christopher, coming in hot with a super chat. By the way, best collab ever. All the best to both of you, and the best to you, Mr. Christopher. I love you dearly. Yeah. So forgive my outburst there. I just always get excited for the lovely, lovely people. Yeah. So I build my list to hold primary. 4 out of the 9 missions that we currently have in 10th edition, You can only score primary by holding no man's land objectives. You can't score by holding your backfield objectives in 4 of the 9 missions. This is a enormous deal. When you're building your army list, it has to be built with that in mind. How do you win the game? Well, you win the game by scoring more points. How do you score more points? Well, in 10th edition, it's by scoring more primary than your opponent, because primary is now worth 50 points instead of the 45 that it used to be. So 50 points on primary, 40 points on secondaries. If you score max primary and your opponent scores nothing on primary and they score max secondary and you score nothing on secondary, you win. So when you're building your list, my advice is to build it with a goal. Do you want to make sure that you get all of your secondary points? Are you trying to table your opponent, or are you trying to deny and hold primary? If you build your list with that in mind, it doesn't matter who you play against. Okay, suddenly it's Eldar and they have all this damage output. Okay, well, I have to hold primary. How do I do that with Eldar on the battlefield? That's what you have to think about. Oh, well, I have GSC and they can string out everywhere. It's like, okay, well, how am I going to win? Well, I have to hold primary. It makes your decisions in game a lot easier, and it makes you a much better player, because suddenly you're not trying to just react to everything that your opponent's doing to you. What you do is you start the game, you say, this is what I have to accomplish. I have to hold this primary. And then your entire game plan is just making that happen. It's not about reacting to the super powerful gun from your opponent over here or to the deep strike shenanigans over here. It's about how do you hold primary. So I really encourage people in the list building step of the game to build your list to do a certain goal and not get distracted by all the shiny things your opponents are bringing. You have to do the purpose of your list. Yeah, that's my rant on that.
Can I put a counterpoint
I
on
would
that?
love for you to put counterpoints on that.
So I think you're pushing primary being important, which is good. But then, as an example, I would give you Tyranids and Biovores, right?
Mhm.
That army's only good because Biovores can score, like the Spore Mines can score, right? Once you take that away, that army's like dumping like a whole tier, right? Would you agree?
Mm, hot take. No, I think Tyranids are
No?
amazing, and everyone. I disagree with a lot of people on that. I think Tyranids are amazing. You have the horror specs for 125 points. It is
No,
the
no, like they have good units, but the
yeah.
fact that they're just trivially scoring secondaries without having to spend that many points or do anything, and it can't really be interacted with unless you can take them out, which is obviously hard to do. So I think like when I think about list construction, I'm thinking, what am I trying to do with the points
Mhm.
that I'm spending? And at the end of it, once you take out all the crap about like, is it living, is it killing stuff, blah blah blah, all you're trying to do is buy points. And so that's
Basically,
why I think putting stuff to do secondaries is like buying points. So like while I agree primarily Custodes is trying to be a primary army because we're a melee army, right? So melee army you might as well be on the primary anyway, right? You're not going to project force, you know, in a distance. You just want to own the point. So you
hmm
want to be a primary army anyway, but you also want to tech into and be a bit more free, I think, in spending points to score you secondaries. Um, yeah. So I think it's okay to build for both, a blend of both.
I definitely don't think that it's a bad thing to try to score secondary. Hopefully, I didn't tell people that I don't want secondaries. That wasn't what I was trying to communicate.
Yeah, yeah, no,
um,
because you're saying like you go for the primaries, and if you get the secondaries on the primaries, that's nice, right? But
mhm.
sometimes you'll get something like what would it be like behind enemy lines and scramblers, right? And if you can't get that, well, you could because you've got your terminators, but you would have had to do that like a turn in advance, or you have them in deep strike or whatever. But you just
Mhm.
want some cheap stuff that can just do it for free
Yeah.
if you can.
And actually, I think the 2 exaction squads that you were talking about earlier, which I do think I'm going to alter my list to include those now that you mention it, I think that's
Because
going
if
to
you
help a
have
lot
five
with.
points spare
Mhm.
and cut an Alaris, that's like you're done, right? Well, I don't know if you have the 5 points. It's very painful if you don't.
No, but I have a 6 block of wardens that I'm pretty sure I'm going to turn into a 5 mana guard, and then
Hmm.
that gives me enough for 2 exaction squads. Um,
300, 225. Yep. You'd have 5 points spare, I think.
yep. Then I just got 5 points to spare. So those are kind of the things I wanted to really, really hit on for people. Guys, drop some things down into chat while we just kind of spitball here for a minute. Did you have anything else that burning things that you wanted to bring up, sir?
Me, uh, No, I think I've given up on trying to make an Ares work. I thought it's nice purely because, like, not because I think the Ares is good, but just because it's an aircraft which
Yep.
gives us true line of sight, and this is a way to play with stuff that you don't normally get to play with, right? Because
Yeah.
what I would love is like some guard mortar teams, right? Just to fire little shot. They don't have to be damaging. They just have to clear chaff to stop their screening. Because enemies that screen is super annoying, and especially if they've got indirect, they've got like fire and fade. I don't want to deal with that and get shot by it all game long. Like obviously on the maps that you're playing, it's like the angles aren't so good to shoot you anyway. Um, but the reason I wanted to try an Ares was just to get around that. You know, I was even thinking about rapid ingressing it to get in the backline and shoot, but actually it's so many points. When I try and build up the rest of the army, I get sad and I stop. So I think that's a dead end actually. I probably wasted like 3 or 4 days trying to do it, and it's not a thing.
Yeah.
I don't think
Uh,
it's a
when I saw that you were doing it, I was wishing you Godspeed, and I was hoping you were going to find something, but I wasn't holding my breath.
no. It's just a little bit too expensive,
Yeah.
and it comes into like so.
So we got a question here. So what's the game plan against Eldar? Um, so as of right now, Eldar took a huge hit. They might as well. I mean, it doesn't matter that they can generate infinite fate dice anymore because it's going to be really hard for them to use all 12 of their fate dice over the course of a game anyway, since it was nerfed to just once per phase. Um, it's pretty similar to everyone else, man. Like that's the whole point of my big rant. Like, what do I have to do to beat Eldar? Well, I have to deny them primary. I have to hold primary, right? I know right now the big scary Eldar list that everyone's talking about is 30 Wraithguard, and that's pretty scary. But what do all of our unit, because they're going to be T7, they'll be -1 to wound when the Farseer puts their -1 to wound buff on them. They're going to have a 4 invuln. But what does our army do? Well, all of our army is going to be strength 7, so wounding on 4s, -1, and puts them on 5s. But they all reroll wound rolls. Trajan's unit will ignore the -1 to wound buff, so I'm not really concerned about killing the Wraithguard. Uh, I'm going to hold primary, and if they come within range, I'm going to put a charge at them. I don't want to stand out in the middle of the entire army and let them shoot me, so what do? Well, I have a Eversor Assassin who can stand in the middle of an objective, and he's got lone operative, so it's impossible to shoot him. And he can hold me primary. I have Kyria Draxus' squad who I can put on maybe one of the far objectives and hold me primary, and you can't shoot her outside of 18. So she's essentially immortal with her squad on the other side of the table, which means that the Eldar player has to come into the no man's land objective that they don't want to come onto because that's where it's going to be easy for me to charge into them. For example, how would I deal with a list of 2 Wraith Knights, an Avatar of Cain, and Shining Spears? Honestly, exactly the same, man. If you didn't see my TTS list, let me pull up the TTS one more time real quick, and maybe that'll kind of help.
So just while you're doing that, I think the
Yeah,
other thing, like I haven't managed to play into Eldora yet, but I just imagine Caladius is not having fun in that matchup because you just have
no,
nothing to shoot, right? You'll pop out to shoot something because you'll be like, okay, why did I take this tank to like sit behind cover and do nothing for 2 turns? So you'll pop out and shoot, and then they'll fire and fade you, and you either die or you still have nothing to shoot. So
yeah,
I think it's Eldar. You're just trying to like do tons of rapid ingress or something like just basically just run at them, try and get into combat, make it messy for them, and if at all possible, like take out all their warp spiders so they can't like do shenanigans and steal stuff off you with like your Eversour's got free Overwatch, but it's not reliably going to kill the warp spiders or something like that. So
So
that's kind of how I land on it.
let's pretend that these 2 Night Wardens I have right here are Wraith Knights, and they have Towering, right? And that's terrifying. We don't want to mess with Towering because Wraith Knights will just delete you. I'll just copy this and put a little Blade Champion in with it.
Well, Wraith Knights are doubly egregious because they're indirect as well.
Yeah, they are. They are indirect, and that is pretty terrifying. So, what do I have to do? Well, I don't want them obliterating my huge, nasty giant squad, so perhaps this is the time where I rapid ingress them. Then I have a Kyria Draxus squad. Let's just pretend that these. Let me just load in a different army real fast. If you guys don't know, by the way, this is Tabletop Simulator, and it's freaking awesome. You get so much value from playing on here. You can play a lot more often and a lot more quality games, unless you just happen to live in a Shark Tank where you just have amazing players nearby you. This is a really fantastic way to just play the game. Okay. So I have an Eversor Assassin right here. He can't be shot because he's a lone operative. So screw it, I'll just put him right here. Can't draw a line of sight against me. Then I'm going to have a Kyria Draxus squad with some Custodian guards. And here's Inquisitor Draxus. And she can't be shot because they're going to be more than 18 inches away. So I don't care about towering right here. Yeah, they can see her through their towering, but I don't care because they can't target her anyway. And then we're going to have maybe my Terminator squad in reserve. And we're going to have or I might have the Big Blade Champ squad in reserve actually in this game. Okay, so they're in reserve. And then we have 3 Terminators on the field, perfectly hidden. And then we've got another 5-man of Terminators in reserve. So what's going to happen here? Let's say the Eldar player gets first turn, and they're going to move on up, and they're going to go like, I don't know, because they move us really fast, right? They're what, a 10-inch movement or something? So they're going to come right here. This guy is going to come on right here. So they can see basically the entire field. Well, okay. After he moves, I'm going to pick these guys up, and I'm going to have him maybe come over here if he didn't scream me out. If he did, then maybe I'll just put him right here. Still can't see me. And now I'm holding primary with my Terminator squad. His indirect isn't going to be that bad. If he does obliterate me with indirect, it's like, well, that sucks. But this puts me in a position where I'm pretty freaking good. At the end of his next move, he's going to move on up, and he's just going to keep coming towards me. I'm going to rapid ingress now. Because what I know is I have to hold primary, and the only way I can hold primary is if I kill the Wraith Knights. So I rapid ingress. He might do an indirect. I'll pop a -1 damage strat. And then I'll be charging him in my next turn. I'll eat a Wraith Knight, and then I'll have one Wraith Knight. I mean, it's really pretty simple, guys. Like, the way the game goes, you have to score the way your army can score. And I'm not going to outscore Eldar by trying to maximize all my secondaries. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hold freaking primary. I might have to rapid ingress to make sure he doesn't shoot me off the table with all of the indirects in turn 1. Okay, that's fine. But it really doesn't change all that much. This is why I do have my lone operatives, though. This is why I have my untargetable units, because that gives you so much flexibility that you wouldn't have otherwise. But at this point right now, in the second turn, Kyria Draxus just moves up, so now they can't see me, even though they have towering, because all the windows on this map, all the windows count as closed, so they still can't draw a line of sight onto them. So then I'll be able to charge in here. It's like, I'm going to hold primary. That's what I'm going to do against Eldar. It's what I'm going to do against everyone. It's the beauty of the army. The army is made to hold primary. All right. Took 2 Caladius to an RTT this weekend, and they bounced off a stop in Gargantuan Squiggoth. Hate it for you, Cam, but also I love the orcs, so I also love it for the orc player. What's your opinion?
And I think this just goes back to the variance of the Caladius, right? You can do. I think I had somebody who took 2 Caladius and they just one shot like a monolith, right? And then you have you, and you just bounced off a stomper. So it's just very. It looks reliable, but it's not reliable.
It's just not, dude. What's your opinion on 1x5 Termies versus a 1x2 and 1x3? Mr. Custodes Collective, why don't you answer this? I've been ranting too long. I apologize for hogging the
I frequently ran 2x2. I've today ran a unit of 3. It felt there was like a larger range of targets that I felt comfortable going for with 3 versus 2, and obviously you have much better chances to res one if one of them die. Like if they die, whereas when you have 2, like there's nothing there, right? If there's no body there, then you don't get a res. I think they're all like, this is like the kind of stuff that they do at the end, where I'm trying to make the points line up rather than necessarily start with Terminators at the beginning, unless you've decided, okay, you can have a brick of 5 and a shield captain, like the Alara shield captain. Other than that, like I'm flexible on whether it's like 2 or 3, right? Because these are kind of, they're either doing secondaries for me, or they're doing like threatening backfield, right? Which is to put it more in your game, it's threatening their primary, right? So you force them to leave something back that can defend against, like rapid ingressing two Alaris or three Alaris or something like that, which actually isn't insignificant, right? They might mean that they're not in the fight for the middle. They can't shoot because they're on this side of the wall, for example. But I don't think I would feel comfortable saying this is the way or this is the best for 5 or 2 or 3.
I 100% agree with you. I definitely prefer 3 over 2 because 3 is an actual unit that can kill things, whereas 2 is more of an action monkey unit. But yeah, I mean, if it's a 2-man unit and that's what fits with the rest of the list, cool. That's going to be very useful. How do you play against units with high toughness like knights? Bro, your entire army gets full wound rerolls against knights. Because all your Terminators are always rerolling wound rolls, and all your Guardians are going to be controlling an objective. And if they're not, you're already losing. So they're going to be controlling an objective, which means they're going to get full wound rerolls. You're going to spend 1 CP to be wounding them on 4s instead of 5s in melee, and you're going to smash them.
I mean, it's a bit tougher now that they can stand over the middle of the point, right? That with that new change that nobody liked the way that you couldn't stand have this invisible pillar. So you will sometimes not be able to get the rerolls unless you have the Terminators, but then it's just more reason to take the Terminators because this is giving you your list kind of tactical flexibility into certain. You don't want to end up in a situation where you've got no tools to solve the problem, right? Because I think of most armies are throwing questions at your list, and if your list doesn't have answers, then sometimes you get really stuck.
Yeah.
So this is why you want stuff like Trajan, because Trajan's your insurance policy for I can't deal with that. Oh, actually, Trajan solves most things. If you get it into melee, so
Trajan's a problem, man. He's such a good value. What do we think of the Greyfax and the prosecutors for hunting psychers? Yeah, I hate that, Christopher. Not a fan at all. I will never take prosecutors when I can take an exaction squad for cheaper. And 9th edition, I loved them, but no longer. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, unless the game changes and all we see are psychers or something like that, which I'm not seeing. Prosecutors don't seem good.
No.
I don't think most of the sisters seem good, if I'm honest. It's just they're interesting stuff, but it just our guards, our wardens, our Alaris, they're extremely flexible because they can kill everything.
They're so good.
That's why they're good. And they're really killy. So they're not a super broken unit. The thing that makes them broken is a stratagem for fight first, right? Oh. That's what makes them broken. But the unit cards themselves, they're just good value. They're not broken value. They're just good value, right? And that's why when you're fighting into the higher tier armies, they're just the unit cards are just broken, so it's tough. You have to use your brain ball, right? But with the prosecutors or the witch seekers or the the girls with the swords, I don't care. This is garbage to me, right? I'm sorry if people like them and they look cool, but from my perspective, I don't even look at them.
That fight first strat, man. If you guys haven't played the Custodians mirror match, it's freaking hilarious now because the entire game is trying to get your opponent to charge you. Because whoever charges loses, basically.
I mean, guns are actually useful in that matchup.
They are. They actually are, yeah.
But I had 2 Caladius outshot by 1 Caladius. That was really sad. So this is what I'm saying about inconsistency, right? His one tank killed both of my tanks. So it is swingy. It is swingy, but the guns would be useful there.
Well, that's why I can't do it though, right? Because Custodes more than any other army in the game. Every army has to deal with inconsistent rolls, but Custodes, all of our units are very good, but they have to perform. If one unit doesn't perform, your entire game plan crumbles.
Because you can't plan your turn, right?
Correct.
Whereas with melee, when you're rolling 30 dice, the distributions, for you to get to the tails, is really rare, right? You're usually somewhere in the normal. So.
Yeah, basically. All right. When do you know when to deep strike your unit or when to deploy them on the field? That's a really tough question, and I think a lot of that just has to come from experience. It's a really shitty answer. Sorry for giving that answer, but I will always have a unit in deep strike for sure, without a doubt. I can pretty much just guarantee you, no matter what game I'm playing, I'll have a unit in deep strike. The question is, do I put 2? Maybe dude, hop in one of our teaching streams. Send me a message and hop in one of our teaching streams, and maybe we can go through it on one of the Wednesday TTS teaching streams. Do you have any wisdom nuggets of pearl to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you generally want to have at least one credible threat in deep strike, and even if it's 2 Alaris, it's better than no Alaris, right? because they have to play around that, and it will just. Whereas if you have everything on the field and nothing could go back into deep stroke, for example, if you didn't have any LRS at all, they know where everything kind of is, and they know your max movement, and they know like this is the most that could happen, and it allows them to just stop screening, for example, right? They don't have to put any resources back or anything like that, or screen the sides or screen the front, or have stuff in the front to absorb a charge or anything like that. So in terms of when to deep strike, it's you have to look at the map, you have to look at their list, and you have to think, okay, what primaries do I want to be on which turn? And this is again links back to the usefulness of stuff like Eversaw, infiltrating assassins, because you don't have to get there on turn one, right? You could just start there, right? Or you scout there and move there. So this is why this is so good. But working back, and then if you wanted to deep strike something like safely and play it unaggressively, right? You could just do it safely without crossing through this area where you just have to get shot at. If you don't have somebody like Drax, where you're running, where you can actually just run there and they can't really shoot you unless they commit something. And even if they do commit something, you're not even that bad. You're not even that bad about it, because probably it was an expensive unit, because it's paying for its mobility, it's fragile for its points, and you might get to just pick it up, and you might even get free movement, right? So they probably just have to let it go and not shoot it.
Yeah.
I mean, I might start trying Drax. Actually, I didn't like it at first, but I think if you're running it down the sides and not the middle, which obviously makes much more sense when you describe it, yeah, I might give it a try.
Yeah, she's definitely used for the side objectives for sure. That's a mistake people make running her in the middle. Let's see. Oh, you know what, Shettel? Yeah, he brought up a really good answer for the prosecutors. So I know most here is all playing individuals, but if you play teams, because I play a lot of teams, I know we're prepping for the WTC tournament right now in about a month. Go Norway, the American for defending his European allies, and if you are playing teams and you don't have access to agents because, say, one of your other armies had to take agents, because the way teams work is only one army can take agents of the Imperium. You can't use them in multiple different armies. Then that might be a good use of prosecutors, because suddenly now you still have a 40-point action monkey unit. So at that point, yeah, I might take prosecutors if I was playing individuals, or if I was playing teams and don't have access to the exactions. Thanks for bringing that up, Shetzel.
And I think like there's a possibility of going the other way as well, right? Where you take two exactions and then you start taking prosecutors on top. But I think that's just too much, because they can't teleport. They can only strategic reserve in. So I don't know if you have views about that, but you're more primary focused anyway. So you'd probably just be like, I don't like the sound of that to begin with. So
I need CP, so I have some. I gotta discard some secondaries,
Oh, okay.
Speaking of CP, what strats do you use all the time, and what strats do you think look tempting but do not give that much value? I have not yet used Honor the Fallen, I think it's called, the one where you get bonus attacks. I forgot the name of it. I haven't used that once yet. It looks awesome. I just haven't used it.
I think a lot of times I just forget it exists, because all I'm thinking about is I need CP to fight first. Do I need it? And do I need to save CP for AGA? Do I need it? And beyond that, like maybe like a charge reroll if I messed up for a command reroll, right? But other than that, like there might be cool strats, but I'm not really thinking about anything else. And that's probably like a really low brain way of playing, but that's in practice, that's what I'm doing. I'm not thinking about these other strats, other than maybe like sticky an objective or something. But
yeah, rapid ingress, obviously. Yeah, I say rapid. I never Overwatch with Custodes. I think it's generally a terrible option. Don't Overwatch with Custodes. Unless it's like a full squad of Alaris Terminators shooting into a 20-min brick of Gretchen. Okay, you can Overwatch that, but don't Overwatch anything else.
No, because they're T5 and shooting, so it's still not that good.
Yeah, but you'll still get full rune rolls because they'll have Zodgrot with them. So, but yeah, that's pretty much. I don't think it's a good thing to Overwatch ever. So, Resurrect Custodian, fight first, -1 damage, +1 to wound. I never re-roll anything. Luckily, we have Blade Champs, so we don't ever have to spend CP to re-roll charges or advances. And the only time I ever re-roll anything is for a crap, I win the game if I make this save, or I lose it if I don't make the save. That's basically the only time I re-roll anything.
I have re-rolled a charge. I have done that.
That's fair. If you have a 3-inch charge and you roll double snake eyes, okay, you can re-roll that charge. That's fair. No shade thrown at you for that one, my friend.
Yeah.
We did have a question earlier, and I want to touch this, and then we'll probably wrap it up unless we get anything else juicy in the chat. someone was talking about the value of choosing fixed versus tactical missions. Do you want to take a crack at that?
I've never actually even looked at fixed.
Yeah.
Not because I think it's bad, but I've never actually physically done it because I wanted to just get used to playing it tactically. And I suppose maybe later on I can look into the pros and cons of fixed. But I think your scoring potential goes down. But obviously, if you start building into that, like maybe you can do a little bit more with list construction, right? Because at the moment, because I'm building for tactical, I have to build to be able to do like all these random things where they suddenly want you to go into the corners or like some, really boring things where you give up shooting or charging or something in your turn.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this is a lot of that's solved when you just play for primary, but the fixed is not good. It's just the only army in my eyes that I think can actually effectively run fixed right now is Tyranids. Because if you miss your secondary for one turn, you can't max secondaries anymore, right? Because the way it works is for fixed, you can score 4 points maximum on each secondary per turn. So you have to max each secondary every turn to get your maximum secondaries. And if you don't do that, you don't max your secondaries, and you get kind of screwed. If you're playing against knights, you're planning on tabling knights to get your maximum bring it down points. I don't think that's a great plan because sometimes you run into games like I had this past weekend where the knight player tabled me and I only killed 2 of them, but I still ended up winning because I scored a bunch of secondary and scored a bunch of primary. But if I had taken bring it down against him as my fixed, there's no way I could have won. Tactical secondaries also gives you a huge CP regeneration bonus. The power of getting an extra CP when you can just discard one of those cards is so freaking strong. I don't know if people really recognize how powerful that is, especially for an army like us where we would love to have an extra bonus CP so that we can resurrect a custodian guard, give us 2 inches of free movement. Like I mean that's so useful just to get that bonus CP. Playing fixed, unless you can guarantee it, like Tyranids can with their behind main lines and engage in all fronts play, it just doesn't cut it. Tactical is almost always going to score you about 30 points, and that's good enough for me. If custodians would get a new unit, what do you think we need? Ooh, that's a cool question. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have anything?
I would love like a custode infiltrating unit
Mm-hmm.
that has
Based.
deep screen denial and
Based.
a redeploy. But that's probably broken, right?
Yeah.
But like that is what I want in my army. I don't want to have to dip into agents. I'm happy to do it. There's a bunch of people that like they never soup. They think it's for aesthetic reasons or fluff reasons, whatever. They don't want to do it. But I would like that as an option that they could take a nice golden boy.
Infiltrators, yeah. What are they called? The older custodians when they retire because they think their performance is going down, but they still serve. The Emperor's Eyes, is that what they're called in the lore? I forget.
Oh, that's too much for me. I don't know.
Okay, I always forget what those guys are called. But yeah, if we could get some of those infiltrating custodians, that'd be amazing. I would love that.
Or we could get a dreadnought that doesn't suck. But how about that? We can make some people mad. Should we do that? Should we do the spicy thing?
Let's piss some people off. Let's talk about those dreadnoughts. Oh, jeez.
I think right that our index is strong unless you're going into like the stronger indexes, right? And then you can take a dreadnought. You can take any dreadnought and you could win and you could be like, see, it's not that bad.
And you'd be wrong.
But I don't think that means that the unit is good. I think it means the unit is playable because the rest of your army is good enough to carry it. That's where I land. Like that's how I think about it. And I hate all these AP1 guns. It's just poo. And I'm sure you can play it, but I think it's just awful, right? Because like the palace is like, what is it? Like 110, 115?
So bad.
It doesn't do anything. Can you imagine? Like that's almost 2 Alaris.
It's so bad.
Get out of here. Anyway, sorry. But like I know people get really defensive about some of the units, but and then I try and be a bit polite about it, but yeah, anyway, sorry.
All right,
I'm assuming you feel mostly the same.
yeah, dude,
So
I'm 100%. I hate all the Forge World stuff. There's not a single Forge World thing I would even consider for a moment outside of potentially, hot take, the Corona's Grab Carrier. But that's for a very specific build, and it's still a little too pricey for me.
it's surprisingly hard to kill, and you
Hmm.
usually want to kill stuff that's not that. And it has, I think it's like OC5 or something. So sometimes when you want to control the point, because somebody's played it against me, and I was like, "What is going on?"
What is this life?
And they jumped out. What did they jump out? They jumped out.
Probably Sagi, I would imagine, to get the wound rolls.
No, that would have made even more sense. But they jumped out. I think Guardians
Okay.
with Trajan for full rerolls and shooting. But I think in their head, it just gave them full rerolls and melee everywhere because they tried to do that against me, even though they weren't on an objective and they were like, "Oh right, it's only in shooting." But it was actually very hard to kill. But I mean, like for instead of rerolls, right? You could just buy another squad. It's 200 points. I don't know.
So Tolvik said that it was called the Eyes of the Emperor. Thanks for that clarification. And he also brought up that in the Horus Heresy there was a unit called the Heteran Guard with some crazy swords. Now that you mentioned that, I would like my freaking swords back. I am so sad that like all my custodians were with sword and board last edition. So now I'm having to rip arms off, and it's like I would love to have my freaking swords back.
Even after the transplant surgeries.
Ugh. Yeah, I would go back. I really enjoyed the sword and board. The pistol swords just reminded me of anime. I missed it.
I'm not. I don't know. I don't really love like all you get is one extra wound, but we have to take it because shooting's so strong. I don't know. Anyway,
Circling back, is the new GW terrain layouts recommended a recommendation approved by WTC and ITC formats? Yeah, so WTC has their own layouts, but they are heavily based on the GW. I still like WTC terrain more, but the GW terrain is pretty dang close. And it's not like it was last edition where if you were playing GW terrain or WTC terrain, you might as well have been playing a different game. It's actually very close now. And then we had one last one. Can we do a deep dive on the GSC matchup before we go? Okay. All right. So here's the
I
deal,
think
guys. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, but I think that's very long, right? You
It's
could.
yeah. That is a video in and of itself, and it's a video I'm actually currently making. So I am a GSC player. I actually started by playing GSC, and then I went to Custodes, and then I went to Orcs. And so this edition, I'm going to be just Custodes and Orcs, basically. I'm not going to play GSC this edition, but I'm very passionate about them, and I have a pretty in-depth knowledge of them. So this actually is a class that I'm building, is a how to play freaking against GSC right now. I will tell you that right now it's a tough match. Some of my friends and I we're in a practice teams tournament right now, and I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm going to play against GSC with my Custodes, and I'm expecting to lose 8-12. So it's differential scoring. So I'm expecting to lose by roughly 10 points in a normal match, and that's okay because of the way teams are set up. I don't really see us beating GSC regularly. It's certainly not impossible. The problem with GSC is that you don't want to kill their units because if you kill their units, that's how they respawn and get brand new get their units back, and they put it in the worst possible position for you. But if you don't completely kill their unit, they're just going to regenerate all their heavy weapons and punish you for it. So it's just a very hard matchup, and man, I do have actually some reasonable advice for it, but that's going to be in a more long form video and not for just right now. Oh, apparently I'm into guard. Never mind. They paired me into guard, not into GSC. That's cool. All right, now I can go crush some Imperial guards. That's nice to hear. Um, okay, man. You have anything else, or are we looking pretty good?
No, so I think one of the things that somebody wanted me to talk about
Yeah,
was
let's do it.
ideal squad sizes, right? Because you have the you can go like guard of 4, you can go 5, you can go 9, you can go 10, right? And I think it's got their pros and cons. And I think like Oath of Moment being, I think it's going to be less common because I think Space Marines are not so good anymore,
Yeah.
right? Because they relied heavily on the Desolators. Like they lost a bunch of points. It's not like the rest of their army got that much better. So I just think we're going to see less of them, which means Oath less prevalent, which means having the bigger unit is less punishing because that matchup comes up less frequently.
Hmm.
But I still think there are pros and cons of having large units, but large units, having a large unit lets you do something that two small units can't sometimes. And I think including reliability, right? If you need to kill something dead and make sure nothing is alive on 2 wins to slap you back, because sometimes that punish is really big if you just don't get those last few wins off.
Hmm.
Nines, you know, you don't have to gamble, but you could gamble on the fact that nothing's going to live through, 10 guard and a blade champion.
Unless it's Lich Guard. Ugh, I hate
Yeah,
those
okay,
things.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Gosh, I had a nightmare. Watch the battle report I post tomorrow. I try really hard just to enjoy every game for every game it is, but sometimes I get salty when it comes to Lich Guard.
Because unless you like crush them to begin with, they'll just wear you down, right?
It's the freaking crypto thralls. It's just the crypto thralls. They're the most silly things in the entire game.
But I think maybe that will be patched as well, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Do I?
we shouldn't be screaming for nerfs because we might get some.
Nah, that's true. That's true. I'd actually be really curious to see how you nerf Custodes right now because it's a big problem. Because Custodes are, in my opinion, slightly too strong.
Yeah, you just change fight first.
Yeah,
Like that's like a priority, right?
that's
And then
got to
the
be it,
army's
right?
dead,
That's
right?
got it.
And then
I don't think the army's dead, no, but that's the way to do it. I think you're correct. Make that a 3 CP stratagem, probably.
then we just have shield captains everywhere.
Yeah, but at that point you can only do it once because you're not going to be able to pay for it and then also do it elsewhere.
No, but you still have Trajan, right? So
Yeah, but he's only
you
once per
you would,
game.
you would have the threat, and then you'd have the interrupt, right? So I mean, I think rather than changing the strat to cost more CP, I think as a game mechanic, I think it's not good, right?
Yeah.
I would prefer it like how it was in ninth, where you both have fight first, but attacker has priority for first election, and I think it promotes more kind of engaging gameplay instead of staring at each other and trying to like get one extra model onto the point.
So your recommendation is just to change the way the fight phase works, not necessarily the stratagem for fights first. Okay, that makes sense to me. I'm following
Correct.
you.
Or remove the stratagem from Custodes, and maybe make it like make it like another enhancement option, right? So you could have Trajan and one other unit that could do it, for example, right? Don't just make it so that if you have 4 or 5 units, any one of them can fight first. It's just I think it's too brutal in two melee armies.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, because in my opinion, it's like you can't points nerf us because all of the Forge world is so bad. There's nothing for us to fall back on. So if you nerf Terminators or you nerf Custodian Guards, like then you lose the unit and it's impossible. My army right now is 6 units, but once you drop it to 5, it's useless. You can't run it.
It would
Um,
help internal balance, but we would not enjoy it.
yeah, I think if you do a point nerf, it's too much for the army to handle and it collapses unless you also make Forge World stuff better, which that's not happening. So I think you might be right. I think the correct way to nerf it is probably the strategy is probably the fights first thing. Anyway, we got a question here. What is the loadout for the exaction squads? Honestly, guys, I have no opinion on that because I've never shot them. I just want know about the
Oh,
med kit.
yeah, you take the med kit. You can take like a grenade launcher, and then beyond that, it doesn't really matter. You want to make sure that you always have at least one assault gun in your unit, because some people say you can advance an action, and some people say you can't. So for the people that will let you, you want to have that option to have at least one assault gun in the unit.
Hmm. Cool. Joke's on you. I throw my knobs at Trajan knowing they'll die, looking for that fight on death. Yeah, actually, yeah. So Nubby McNub, I love your name. That's actually 100% how you handle or how you handle Custodes right now. So for anyone who's watching who's not a Custode main or who's looking to play into Custodes, yeah, that's how you do it. You have fight on death units. So I know I did a stream a little while ago. It was a drinking stream. It wasn't exactly family friendly, but my buddy Cooper ran into me and he ran a bunch of squig hogs and I fought first and I slaughtered them, but he just spent 2 CP and fought him death, and he really slapped me back in a super, super nasty way that I wasn't expecting. So having those fights on death is absolutely the way to handle Custodes. Also, the next thing that you want to do is you don't want to give us the opportunity to fight first multiple times. You want to charge and kill the unit that you kill. You don't want to dedicate your resources into our big Guardian squad and then also into our Terminator squad and then also into Trajan's. Because my Guardian squad's going to fight first, and then you'll fight one of the others, and then the other squad will fight first again. So you want to focus one unit. You don't try to table us in a turn, at least not in melee. It's a terrible decision. So fights on deaths and focus down the one unit. Do you have any other like just brilliant little tips on how to play against Custodes?
Yeah, 2 charges is okay, 4 charges is okay, 1 charge or 3 charges are bad, right? Because we can fight first and then interrupt, or fight first twice. So, some like people still do it sometimes, and I'm just like, what are you doing? And otherwise, shoot them. And I think a lot of Custodes can't screen. Some can. So you can apply like a bit of pressure, because some people, they try to be really, in my mind, it's a bit greedy by sticking an objective, but then on some maps it actually doesn't matter whether you hold your backfield or not, because it's all about the middle anyway. But if you can, try and set up in a firing line where you can just get infinite value with your shooting units, right? Like I had a game where I just got shot to death, like completely by Forge Fiends. I think between the two of them, they must have picked up like 1100 points in my army. That was brutal. So, if you can get a nice firing lane like that looks through an objective, like try and stay there. Screen that unit out, right? If you have a shooting unit that's very, very efficient, like, or an exocrine, right? That's very efficient shooting profile into Custodes. Just screen that out so it always gets to fire all game. So this is like one of the other reasons. Like I sometimes like to have, like I like guns. So I'm not even sure I like 2 Custodes anymore, but I think I would like the security blanket still of 1. But I wouldn't try and fight Custodes. I would just try and shoot them. So if you're a melee army, it's pretty sad. And you would be trying to kind of crush them in one place, where you're just drowning them in bodies, right? If you get charged by like 20, 30 Terminators, you can fight fast, but everything dies afterwards. So
Seems like pretty good advice. We did have someone. We had Shuttle mentioning that you can advance in action with assault. Sorry, man. I may have missed it? Did someone in the chat say that you can't do an action if you advance with assaults?
No. So what I was saying is, you want to have in your exaction squad, you want to have at least one gun that is assault.
Right.
So because there are 2 like as far as I know, they didn't release an FAQ on it on whether you can, because it's about the whole eligible to shoot and rules as written, rules as intended thing. So it's to give you the option either way.
Perfect.
Into your benefit.
Nice. Cool. I think I just missed that, so I just got the comment. Okay, everyone, my final advice for your initial investigation into 10th is make a plan for your army and do that plan. That's how you're going to win these games. That's how you're going to do 10th. 10th is an amazing game. It's infinitely more fun than 9th edition was. There are, of course, a few alpha state, imbalances that need to be cleaned up a little bit. But honestly, man, the missions are so much more fun in this edition. And if you're not a competitive player, I highly, highly encourage you guys to start playing competitively, because the game gets more fun. All the things you hear about toxic players, all that happens at the people who are almost good level. Like the good players aren't toxic, the bad players aren't toxic. It's the people who are almost good that are toxic. So just avoid those. Just be a bad player and have fun, and then become a really good player and have fun, and you're gonna have a blast with it. But yeah, build your armies to do one thing and do that thing really, really well. You have any closing advice?
Try and find really hard matches and try and lose really hard, because I think you learn so much from crushing losses, and it makes you rethink the game sometimes, like in terms of army construction, like am I playing the game wrong? Because that helps you improve the most versus like beating up your buddies that you're much better at the game at, if that makes sense.
That's actually amazing advice. I've got a battle report coming out tomorrow where I learned a very, very valuable lesson, and it's actually a really good, because my buddy Shetel, who I was talking to in the chat here, was actually teaching a lot in that battle report, and he's teaching about this concept of just doing your army's job and ignoring everything else. I think it's going to be really valuable for a lot of people. I know I learned a lot of lessons from my only defeat as Custodes in 10th edition. But yeah.
And then, sorry to cut across, but also one other thing, when you play with people that are like quite chill, what I like to do is, instead of playing it as like a quote unquote competitive game, you treat it as like a learning game for both of you. So if you spot any mistakes from either side, you kind of backseat drive them and everybody's fine with it. So you can both see the maximum potential of each other's army and list, versus you made a mistake, I'm going to super punish you for this, right? So, if you're, for example, you're playing against GSC and they don't deploy on the objective at the 5-point star to screen you out for the 3 inches, right? You should be like, hey, you should do it like this, otherwise this thing happens, rather than doing the thing and be like, aha, I flipped your primary. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think this is a much better way to play and improve massively, versus like, I won, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about because you play in teams and you have your practice buddies and they're doing this all the time naturally. But I think for people
that's
at home,
freaking great, and that's what you practice in stages, right? So you start the way you just described, and that you just described it very eloquently. You start with, "Hey, I'm going to hold your hand and talk to you about what my army does while you play," and then you go into the matches where you have to get ready for the tournament, and at that point in time, you let yourself make mistakes. So you don't ask for permission to go back and fix things. Like if you make a dumb mistake and your opponent's like, "Yeah, that sucked," own your mistake and never make that mistake again. And then once you're done through that phase, then you go to the tournament where when you're at the tournament, you make sure that you're talking everything out with your opponent. So you go, "Hey, listen, you're just touching this objective and it looks like it's 14 inches away. So I have a 5-inch movement. So we agree that no matter what, that's going to be a 9-inch movement. That's going to be a 9-inch charge next turn." And like, yes, we agree. So you don't worry about things getting bumped and having to measure it later, right? So you go in stages. You go to, "Hey, listen, we're going to play this game against each other together." And then you go to no mercy, but it's with love and you have to learn from your mistakes. And then you go to your tournament play. Those are the stages that I think that you do to prep yourself for competitive tournaments.
yes, because by the time you go to the tournament, you want to have, you want to understand your opponent's list, how it works inside out, and
Yep.
you're not going to like forget to golden light. You're not going to forget to drop in like rapid ingress, all this kind of. It's like basic stuff, but not basic stuff, because when you're trying to, learn a new edition, there's a lot of info at you. You're like, oh, actually, should I have Overwatched when you moved? Right.
Tons.
So, after that, it's like getting reps in to kind of cut out all the unforced errors.
Heck yeah, man. Okay,
But
cool.
this has been awesome.
This is great, dude. Thanks so much for. If you guys don't know, Custodes Central here, he recommended us do this. I am going to go and drop a link to his channel into the description as soon as we hit end, which is going to be in about 37 seconds. Dude, thanks so much for coming on. Maybe next time we do a live stream game on your channel.
I have to figure out some tech issues, but we can definitely record one that I'd be happy to upload on my channel.
Cool, we'll figure something out. But this was great. I really appreciate your expertise and your knowledge coming on, and hope everyone here had a blast. We loved the chat. You guys were super engaging. Thanks for being here. This is awesome, man.
All right, thanks very much, everyone, and we hope to see you here on the channel on Crumpkin soon, because he does definitely drop really, really good Custodes content.
Oh, you legend.
I didn't, I really liked your content, so that's why, that's how we reached out to you. Somebody just said, "Oh, we can drag him in," and so that's what happened.